Ladies and gentlemen, of course, as per the blessing and also yet curse that is running across this channel, you guys know when I upload a brand new news roundup video that there's a chance at the exact same time or nearabouts there that there will be some even bigger potentially news released. And that is exactly what happened last night. So in today's video, we need to talk about the casting of Sean Gunn, James Gunn's brother, as Maxwell Lord in the DCU, and the response to that I'm seeing online is very interesting. We could also talk about, of course, how I feel about this, what I think could be going on with this character in the DCU, and also there's some other news out there within the DCU that's making rounds online. According to insiders, they are saying that Supergirl will be appearing in Superman Legacy. So I've got quite a few things to say about that as well. So, you know, this is like a add-on, a bit of DLC, if you will, to yesterday's news roundup video. Go check it out. There's some interesting stories in that if you haven't seen it already. So go ahead and like this video if you do go on to enjoy it. I'd really appreciate that. And of course, consider subscribing for any brand new DCU news roundups just like this. So this first story that we're diving into is coming from Deadline. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if there's even more castings to be announced. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. If there is, of course, I will be doing another update video eventually. So Deadline is saying Sean Gunn to play villain Maxwell Lord in James Gunn and Peter Safran's DC Universe, The Dish. So, exclusive. We understand that Guardians of the Galaxy alum Sean Gunn is set to take on the role of evil businessman Maxwell Lord in the new DC Universe that's being overseen by James Gunn and Peter Safran. The role was previously played by Pedro Pascal in the 2020 movie Wonder Woman 1984. Did it really come out that long ago? Oh my god, we're about to enter 2024. Did it really? Anyway, it's not clear, and this is where stuff gets interesting. It's not clear if Sean Gunn's Maxwell Lord will make a cameo in brother James Gunn's Superman Legacy, which will go into production next year. The character, as I hear it, will be referenced in the background of Legacy, but will appear in future DC projects. A similar motif will occur for other characters in the new DC Universe. Man, I've got so many little kind of subtopics to get into with this main topic. So before I get into the Boba tangent mode, and before we get into how I think this character could play into the story of the DCU, or just some general ideas there, we need to get into my reaction of James Gunn casting his brother Sean Gunn as Maxwell Lord. So let me first say, I pretty much like to love all of the DCU castings that James Gunn has done so far. I mean, for crying out loud, David Corenswet Superman, you guys know I was calling that when he was a frontrunner. The same with Rachel Brosnahan, absolutely in love with it. I love Anthony Carrigan as Metamorpho, really happy with Eddie Gathke's Mr. Terrific. Isabella Merced, that's more to the like. I'm kind of indifferent with a couple of them, so Isabella Merced, I'm like, okay, Hawkgirl, let's see how that goes. The list goes on. Now, as for Sean Gunn, this is the first one where I'm kind of like, yeah. So Sean Gunn here, as Maxwell Lord. Maxwell Lord is not who I'd cast, but here's the situation. A lot of people are absolutely hating this, and of course it's feeding into the whole discussion of James Gunn nepotism castings. But what I will say, with regards to the whole nepotism thing, is that I do think people need to have this same energy for plenty of other directors that they love out there who have done the exact same thing throughout many multiple movies that they've done. I just do need to point that out, because I think Gunn, and this isn't really a revelation to any of you who are just, you know, in the same-ish boat as me, know he's in a very big hot seat in Hollywood at the moment, especially with a huge franchise such as DC, many fans there split amongst, you know, I don't need to go over the bloody history of what's going on with the fandom, but this is just something that seems to get laid into quite a bit with this specific point of Gunn casting friends or, you know, even family in this case. And I do need to remind you, just because I'm saying this doesn't make this casting slap. It doesn't make it great. I'm not backtracking on what I said there. That's not what I'm saying. Be disappointed in this casting, sure. I just think with this one, of course, the stigma is worse here because it is, of course, James Gunn's brother, mixed with, I think, a few other things with many people feeling like Sean Gunn, even if you want to say, okay, maybe he can play other roles, is he really Maxwell Lord? So it's just this big bubbling cauldron that's already been bubbling for a while. Now you've just added in an ingredient that's made it just go, you know? Now, having said all of that, it is more of a situation of it is what it is now. Now, if done well, it could be, like, to be fair to him, it could be quite a breakout role for him. And I'm not trying to diminish him there in any way. He's been an actor for a long, long time, but he's never obviously been in like a big breakout role situation. So I do want to see, despite the apprehension that I feel here, the apprehension that I think a lot of us are feeling, what Gunn is cooking here. And believe it or not, call me a shill if you want to. I don't really care. But I don't think Gunn, believe it or not, I feel like I need to overstate that, would cast his brother in this role if he really thought there's no way he can do this. I know you're going to be like, but Boba, nepotism, blah, blah, blah. Like, trust me. Well, it's weird to say trust me, but I just don't think Gunn would be that stupid. And he's worked with his brother a lot, and I believe that Gunn believes he can pull off this role, at least in his vision of Maxwell Lord. And that's the thing, right? I think a lot of people see Sean Gunn as Kraglin from Guardians in the Galaxy, with that kind of demeanor that he had. But he's an actor, and hopefully one with good range. I do have to admit, I haven't really seen him in plenty of things outside of his projects in the DC EU, for example, Weasel, and, you know, when he was doing behind-the-scenes motion capture for Rocket, and then, of course, Kraglin. So maybe it is very well indeed hard to picture Sean Gunn with a range to offer something else, but he could. But just to level with everyone here, and kind of in my conclusion to my reaction for Sean Gunn playing Maxwell Lord in the DCU, even with me saying that and just trying to apply this gesture of positivity surrounding the casting, even if you want to take the perspective of, you know, okay, well, you know, he might be able to show what he's got with Maxwell Lord in the DCU, and I know we've only seen him as Kraglin, but he might be able to do it. It's more, I think, even if you want to take that into account, it's more that he isn't what most people picture as Maxwell Lord from the comics. And that is because he doesn't really look, you know, straight up like Maxwell Lord in the comics. Not that I'm a massive fan of, like, the vision and direction of Wonder Woman 1984, but one thing I will say is that Pedro Pascal was more of a, what you'd for sure give your head a little bit of a nod to, in terms of if you got like a casting pool of actors and Pedro Pascal was in there, you'd be like, okay, yeah, I could see Maxwell Lord. But if Sean Gunn was in there, you'd be like, But at the same time, it's not as though sometimes we haven't had castings before that we've been pleased with at the end result that didn't necessarily exactly resemble their comic book counterpart visually. Just saying. Bottom line, I do need a bit of convincing at the end of the day. But I'm not going to be one of those people online being like, blah, 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 James Gunn, what's he doing? No. But I'm not like, yeah, let's go at the same time. Anyway, what I find interesting here as well, as we get into what is Maxwell Lord doing in the DCU right now, is that the report does say that it's not clear if Sean Gunn will make a cameo in Superman Legacy, but Deadline hears that the character will be referenced in the background. So one thing this reminds me of is the overstuffed claims going out there online. A big part of this video, I think, is also going to be getting into the fandom's reaction. Now, we're going to get more into that specifically with the Supergirl news, because, as I said, that's making a lot of rounds as well. Another thing that I think is just somewhat interesting, if not funny, about these big trade reports is that, once again, the report says Sean Gunn to play villain Maxwell Lord. Similar to how he had that headline of how the engineer would be playing a villain in Superman Legacy. And these statements by, you know, these press trades, if you will, aren't really true. You know, the engineer and the Authority aren't villains. She's not going to be the... But now, as a result, this is one of my pet peeves of whether you're a leaker, whether you're another YouTuber, whether you're a big trade. If you put information out there as a statement, I then get people coming to my comment section saying, oh, well, they're the villain. You know, they believe this stuff, when that's not actually necessarily the case. And funnily enough, guess who else believes that? One of the creators of Maxwell Lord said on Instagram threads here, interesting news, but our Max was never a villain. I hope James goes with the Giffen de Matthias Maguire version, probably butchered his name there. But funnily enough, around the same time, we had Gunn posting to threads basically saying the same thing. Calling Max a villain is a bit reductionist as far as I'm concerned. What do you say? And he tags one of the creators of Maxwell Lord, who just said what I just read out. So they're both basically saying the same thing. And they're right. He's more shady, more sketchy. He's not like a big bad. He's not Lex Luthor. Let me put it that way. And one thing that's interesting about Maxwell Lord being, referenced and how they say he could just be referenced rather than having a big role in Superman Legacy is because the reference could lead into something we've been discussing over the DCU discussion series on this channel for a long, long time. So just to, put one foot in that pool there of sprinkling some ideas of how maybe Maxwell Lord comes into this is that we still don't really know anything about the status of any team-ups in this world, of any Justice League that could be out there. And given what I've said that could be going on and how I've theorized about a, reverse Kingdom Come situation, and I don't want to get into that again, but very briefly just to say, obviously in this DCU world and where heroes exist and have existed for some time, with Superman Legacy being the title of this movie, heroes to wannabe heroes could be running rampant as their population have increased, as the decades and decades and decades and decades have gone by. And of course, they're not all fitted with the exact same moral or ethical values. Now, that doesn't make them all villains. It's just maybe some of them are more like the Authority. Maybe some of them are more like the heroes that you see in Kingdom Come. Now, obviously, with the title and the theories we've had about Superman Legacy and the casting, such as Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, Metamorpho, Guy Gardner as a Green Lantern, and so on and so forth, being in this movie, there could, of course, be slight teams already forming as, we have James Gunn saying Clark's, or should I say Superman's, metahuman compatriots, and they might even have their own potential little Justice League International, even though it might not be a fully fledged Justice League. Now, as I always say, adaptations aren't copy and paste here, but the interesting thing about that is Maxwell Lord has been involved with the Justice League International in the source material. So again here, I don't expect Maxwell Lord to be heavily involved in Superman Legacy's plot, but I do think that this is maybe catering to some of the large world building that could be going on with some of the rumors out there, for all we know, especially as Superman is in his early years at this point. We know he's not a veteran, but we know it's not a younger years origin tale at the same time, that this could have something to do with some government regulation, of course, with other teams to emerge in the DCU with the Authority. They could be starting off in that way. And then, of course, you have Superman, who is beyond, most certainly beyond, the government's control, which could cause some controversy there. That's been explored in so many stories. Ultimately, I'm not saying all of this is going to happen down to a T, but I do think the general idea of what I floated about there will be played about with, in some way, in the DCU as heroes rise up, namely with Superman in Superman Legacy, and we'll see the beginnings of that with, Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, and other heroes that we know are going to be helping tell the Superman story of Superman's life in this film. Now, as you guys know, I like to be, or try to be, as comprehensive as I can be in these videos. So one thing I also wanted to cover is, in the fallout of this news of Sean Gunn being cast as Maxwell Lord in the DCU, quite a few people are complaining at the same time in that he's playing way too many roles in the DCU, from Weasel to G.I. Robot in Creature Commandos, and now Maxwell Lord. Now, just hearing that at face value, you might be like, oh, wait, what? Is he actually playing like 3 roles? Isn't that a bit weird? But I think people just aren't really thinking about it for more than 1 second, because the way I see that, to be fair there, even though animated Creature Commandos characters will, yes, indeed one day play live action roles, but with regards to Sean Gunn playing G.I. Robot in Creature Commandos and Weasel, it's not exactly like they're going to use his face, his likeness here. So technically, Maxwell Lord is indeed the only character where Sean Gunn is using his actual, Sean Gunn face and likeness and body, if you will, for the role. So people like bitching and bitching and bitching about that, like trying to just add another reason of hate onto this. Like, again, I get like the foundation of the argument almost, but it just doesn't make sense. Like, G.I. Robot's probably going to be similar to Robot Man, Cliff Steele on Doom Patrol, and you might have a very distorted robotic voice from Sean Gunn. Weasel, I shouldn't even need to explain that one, so, again, you don't have to like the casting, but give the guy a break with regards to this actually being his actual face and body and likeness to play Maxwell Lord. This is also why when Gunn was asked, does this mean DCU actors can play more than one role like Nathan and Sean? And he responded, voice roles, yes, but on-screen roles, generally no. And a lot of people are trying to like use this again to kind of dogpile on it, but the generally no part would mean, for example, like Momoa still being Aquaman in the DCU and Lobo at the same time, playing both roles. You can't really escape the likeness there, can you? So they're not the same thing. This isn't that. Now, let's move on to the second subject of this video, but it's still kind of related. So according to Daniel RPK, Supergirl will indeed be in Superman Legacy, which is very interesting. Now, many of you probably know this source. Again, Daniel RPK, I would say, is one of the more known insiders slash scoopers out there. They have got quite a few things right, but of course, some things wrong as per the scooper life. But I will say, without naming names, not nearly as many and as embarrassingly as some others out there. But anyway, this one doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't. If you've been watching my videos closely, when I've talked about Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, I have entertained the idea that Kara could appear in Superman Legacy. I've never thought in a significant way, though. That's the thing. And as per what is being reported here as well by DCU Leaks, so they say we can corroborate Daniel RPK's scoop that Supergirl will appear in Superman Legacy. Also, we can exclusively report that this will be a cameo, and they're looking for white actresses between 18 to 25, but ideally younger. She won't be cast until a director joins Woman of Tomorrow. So one thing I want to start off with as well before we dive into this a little bit deeper, a lot of people are now reacting to this saying that they're, absolutely gutted because they thought Sasha Calle would reprise her role. And for me, I personally don't understand that. I feel like it's been painfully obvious with all the news that we've got over the past, several months or longer that, with the Justice League not reprising their roles, sure, certain things haven't really ever been outright confirmed, excuse me, by James Gunn. But I don't know. I just felt like it was kind of obvious that Sasha Calle wouldn't be staying on as Supergirl. Now, as for like who I would want for Supergirl, you guys know me. I have a very split mind when it comes to fan castings. A lot of you are really wanting me to come out with my DCU Batman fan casting video. As for Supergirl, I don't know. I will probably come out with a video for that one day. Right now, what comes to the top of my mind is Ivana Sakno, who played, I probably butchered that name, Shin Hati in, of course, Ahsoka. I think she's really good. But then again, I mean, she's 26 right now, and apparently, according to DCEU Leaks, they're looking for 18 to 25, but ideally younger. So I don't know. That's kind of the ballpark of what I think about with Supergirl. I think she would be great. I'm not saying this is my fan cast, but I know a lot of you would be asking me, so I don't know. Just take that for now. I will come up with other suggestions later on. I know a lot of people will be saying Lily Reinhardt, Madeline Klein, and who knows? Maybe they might be front runners. We're gonna have to wait and see. So my breakdown on this is that with regards to Supergirl being in Superman Legacy, obviously what we know is that she's got her own movie, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. And in that story, she is already Supergirl. And it's not really set on Earth. Like, Supergirl goes on this space journey, indicating that, in the DCU, Supergirl will already perhaps be a thing. And this is where, we really need to think about, okay, how are they going to do this? As I always say, adaptations aren't copy and paste. So you're going to have to think, while they might be faithful to Tom King's Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow comic, where does that place Kara arriving to Earth in David Corenswet's Superman's DCU? Well, to me, it has always made sense. The reason why I've endorsed or like the idea of Kara at least being in Superman Legacy, and I've even said before, not in necessarily a suit. She could just be meeting up for a coffee with her cousin in one scene in the film, perhaps as being, rumored here as a cameo. Nothing too gimmicky, but it's like, hey, Kara is here. But what I'm wondering is that if Superman isn't necessarily massively known to the world when we see him in Superman Legacy, will Supergirl really already be established already as Supergirl? Which then leads me to thinking, what if when we pick up with Superman Legacy, again, as we know, Clark has already been Superman for a little bit of a minute. What if Kara has only recently touched down on Earth sometime before the events of the movie? So as a result of that, Clark is perhaps trying to help her out, and Woman of Tomorrow is still about Supergirl finding herself, differentiating her own identity from that of Superman, since, again, Superman is already a hero by the time she finds herself on Earth, and that would remain true to that identity aspect of the comic story. So the movie of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow could not only explore the Woman of Tomorrow story where Kara goes out into space to help Ruthie, the girl, I'm just going to say that, but also at the same time tell Kara's origin in maybe flashbacks as she gets to know the alien girl that she's helping out as per in the comic book. I feel like that could be a good way to balance it. I don't know though, ultimately, these are just ideas from me. For all we know, this cameo of Supergirl could be her actually arriving to Earth. It could be like a post-credit scene cameo, and we might not see so much of her since that was the Superman Legacy movie until Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, and where Kara is like, wait, Clark? Is that you? Kal-El, rather. And he's already, as we know, as per traditionalist canon, already Superman by the time she rocks up. And maybe she, again, isn't necessarily Supergirl as she already is in the story, but she still struggles with, okay, so who am I now if my cousin's already here? But she also tells Clark her experience, tells him more about his Kryptonian heritage, in which he doesn't know a massive amount about. And then eventually, maybe that is, you know, a part of the movie, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. Like, she's telling him over coffee, but I don't know, that sounds a bit too tropey, but she's still going to go on that spacefaring adventure as she does. Don't forget, after all, this has been described by James Gunn, quote unquote, a very different type of Supergirl, much more hardcore. Within our story, we have Superman, who was sent to Earth and raised by incredibly loving parents and nurtured, whereas Kara was in Krypton, and she was on a piece of Krypton that drifted away from the planet and lived there for the first 14 years of her life among a horrible situation where she watched everybody around her die. So she's a much harsher and more up version of Supergirl that we've been used to this far. And that the latter part of that description makes me very interested. And before anyone says, oh, Gunn's gonna go so dark with Supergirl, no, I think he's just kind of being real there after everything that Kara has been through. And one last thing I think I want to say in this video with regards to not only Supergirl and her possible cameo in Superman Legacy, but also Sean Gunn's Maxwell Lord, is there's a lot of complaints about this movie being very overstuffed. So I'm going to give my take here. Feel free to disagree with it. Feel free to agree with it, but also feel free to just be apprehensive and just like not really know where to land, because I think that's probably the most wisest position to be in, because I can't tell you for a fact it's going to be this way or that way. But I do want to say, I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm still not like outright going to subscribe to that right now. Like, it is overstuffed. Oh my God, how's this a Superman movie? Now, don't get me wrong. As I said, I do understand the apprehension there about how some may be concerned that the story may not be surrounding Superman as much, despite Gunn saying that the story does revolve around the main protagonists, Lois and Clark. But I think the energy just going into Superman Legacy and assuming this is a bit weird. And I say that just because we have these cast members. Why are people assuming that they all have, like, main leading roles? Like, What? You know, what if a lot of the castings are just there to establish that the DCU is a place in where heroes exist and have existed, quote unquote, James Gunn there. They play a part in the movie for sure, but that doesn't make them have 3/4 of the screen time available. If you are a firm believer of that Superman Legacy is overstuffed, and I'm not saying that you won't be proven right by the end of it, I need to stress that, as I said, but like, as I said, right now, I feel like that's going into it with some bad faith. I do suggest going over some of your favorite movies over the past few years and seeing how many cast members are in those films. It doesn't matter if you're comparing them to comic book films or non-comic book films, because the only point I'm trying to make here, as with any story in a lot of movies, I'm sure not all of them are the same, but a lot of those other actors play roles that help tell the main character's story in the film, and thus they're sprinkled throughout the plot. But with those movies, with the multiple upon multiple cast members announced, even if the film is named after one individual character. Nobody's like, oh my god, it's so overstuffed. How's it going to be about this one character or whatever, right? They all help aid telling the main character's story or whatever. And James Gunn is adamant that these metahuman compatriots, as he calls them, also do the same with Clark's superhero side of his life. I don't know, though. I'm going to end my ramble there. That is absolutely everything I've got to say about this. So let me know your takes on Sean Gunn being cast as Maxwell Lord. Let me know if you agree about the things that I mentioned and, you know, the fallout from some fans out there. What role you think Maxwell Lord could play in the DCU? Do you think it's got anything to do with what I roughly went over? And then, of course, let me know what you think about Supergirl and some of my ideas there. Anyway, guys, can't wait to see what you have to say. Leave this video a like if you did enjoy it. Do consider subscribing for more updates on the DCU, reviews, news, breakdowns, and all kinds of things as well. But until next time, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you members of the DCU in the next video. Goodbye.